shows. It's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Welcome to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo, Dr. Shirley and medium Kellee White. Two perspectives, one world. This is Both Sides Now.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Both Sides Now. I'm Dr. Shirley.
And I'm medium, Kellee White.
And we've got John, our engineer.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey. So today we're talking about pain.
Yes.
As
Emotional
in,
pain?
ouch.
Ouch. Emotional pain, probably physical pain.
Well, interestingly enough, something a little something about the brain.
Okay.
Is that emotional pain affects the circuitry of the brain that registers physical pain.
So explain that.
So, well, it hits those same spots. There isn't like a different spot in the brain that registers emotional pain. So to the brain, it feels like physical pain. And that's why, that whole thing, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's a lie. They do, because that's why, when you get shunned from a group, it hurts. It really hurts. It doesn't, you won't be able to, when there's emotional pain, you won't be able to go, oh, that hurt my foot. You don't feel the physical pain, but to the brain, it registers that way, which is also why it's unfortunately so easily to get addicted to painkillers, because they're not just, decreasing or lessening your physical pain. They're actually also decreasing your emotional pain. So that's where the addiction is. Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting, but it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you deal with a lot of emotional pain? I mean, I know we both do in our practice, but is there anything in particular that you have found when you're working with somebody about emotional pain that you help them with?
Well, sometimes when it's too difficult for whatever reason to get in touch with your emotional pain, it'll show up as physical pain.
Okay.
And so sometimes when they'll come in and they'll talk about physical pain, we're always trained to say, okay, let's rule out everything medical, go and get it checked out and that kind of thing. But then I do, the somatic, I go into the body to see if there's maybe something that's unresolved or the person's unaware of. And it's so interesting. It fascinates me every single time, even though I know that that's how it works just because I was trained in it. But we tune in to the body and I just tune in without judgment, with curiosity. And then all of a sudden, this like random, not random, thought or memory or image pops up that connects everything together. It's fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, what happens spiritually is the energy is allowed to move up. So it begins the process of releasing the energy. And when that energy is released, you have the chakras opening up, expanding, but it also allows that kundalini energy, your life force to continue to go and move. You get very clear that way.
Wow. Well, that would make
actually
sense.
Profound.
Yeah, that would make sense. And so then all of a sudden the pain could be gone, or in this one case I'm working with this one woman, the intensity of the pain, she has a very real injury, but the intensity of the pain is gone. So what I say, is let's work through the emotional piece of it. So if your pain now feels, let's say, to 60, and we can work through 40, then you're just feeling 20% pain, and that's the actual physical pain. We're kind of working through and getting rid of the emotional pain that kind of, piggybacks and gets on top of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that people hold on to pain for a reason?
Sometimes they talk about pain being kind of like a circuitry, kind of like the temperature gauge, where it's you get so used to it because it goes, it signals your brain and then it has that loop that you get used to that loop, and so it's really, you have to break that loop so it doesn't continue to register that way. You have to do something to kind of interrupt it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then at that point, do you teach them new ways of feeling that?
Well, a lot of times when you've worked through whatever that pain was representing, then it dissipates. You know, and again, if it started as a real physical injury, then you'll just feel the residual of the physical injury part.
Right.
You know, and not the part that's kind of added to, you know, that's the emotional piece.
Well, let's talk about emotional pain.
Yeah, if
It's a tough one, isn't it?
well, yeah, and it does hurt. It's not just, you know, and you know what really I wish people would understand, because it really upsets me, is that just because it's not tangible and we can't see it, we think we can, quote unquote, get over it. And it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
You know?
No.
Nothing erases trauma. Age doesn't erase trauma. You know, the passing of days doesn't erase trauma. You have to work through it, you know, and you can't just get over it when you've had, you know, different traumas in your life.
And when you've had different traumas in your life, and people will have said, you know, just get past it. You know, you may have had a parent that was, you know, stupid, and it just says, just get through it, just get over it. Does the trauma, do you find that it just sticks in the body somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's all lodged in the body.
It's all lodged in?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, that would, again, in my field, it would bring down your vital life force. So when your vital life force is down, you're going to start feeling, you know, sadness, depressed, lonely, emotional pain.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, maybe you can bring it up, John. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a great book, and something about like the body remembers. And it does. The body remembers
What's his name
everything.
again?
Bessel, Bessel, van der Kolk, Vander. There it is.
Okay.
And he just came out with a book, and it's great. It's a great book. And tell me the title of it, because I can't.
Let me look here. Is it The Body Keeps Score?
Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, wow.
There's been also books, you know, The Body Remembers. I mean, it does. What the body remembers, what the mind forgets.
Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking about patterns of pain, or patterns that recreate pain, or, you know, if you don't get to the root of the issue, then it constantly is like a hamster wheel and recreates itself over and over again. You know,
Yeah.
so it was interesting when I went to see Dr. G.
Oh, okay.
You know, and we discussed
Who is a homeopath,
Right.
A classically trained homeopath, and he works with you and gives you the correct remedy. It's an extraordinary
Yeah, and
process.
he's an MD from USC, so
Yeah.
he is, you know.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
We'll have to have him on. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
he's extraordinary.
He's amazing.
and he was having, you know, the process. He asked a lot of questions,
Right.
and you were, while you're going through the process, there's stuff that's coming up that you see that it's actually the same pattern with just different people or different situations,
Right.
but it's the same pattern repeating over and over again, and it's all linked back to a core belief or a core issue. And it's always getting to that bottom of that core issue and resolving that trauma or that core issue that actually frees you from.
Absolutely.
The
It frees
pain.
you. It frees you.
It really does.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. You know, I think what's important to understand is when the two people, when we've had, you know, given our childhood environment, usually it's mom and dad are the two, you know, most important people in our lives when we're little. And it could be siblings too. You know, a lot of research has shown how damaging a sibling can be if they're, you know, always pick on you and that kind of stuff. But it plants 3 seeds, and 3 important seeds, or leaves 3 imprints, you know, is about myself. Am I worthy? Am I lovable? Am I deserving?
Okay.
You know, about you, can I trust other people? Are other people trustworthy? And the world, is the world a safe place? So you can imagine, you know, if you think back and you kind of, you know, with curiosity observed your childhood experiences and how attuned your parents were and how they were with you, what 3 seeds were planted in your mind? And that's kind of, those are the kind of bricks that then we build our house on as adults. And so that's really something to give, you know, to spend a little time and give some thought. And it's not to blame, but it's to understand. And it goes with what you were saying, you know,
Yeah.
those core beliefs
Yeah.
that then really, you know, affect us as we get older. We base a lot of decisions on that. If I don't feel worthy,
Right. I think we base all decisions
right,
on
yeah.
it.
So in many
Really.
ways, we're still dealing with that inner child and the trauma from the inner child, maybe?
yeah,
be.
absolutely. And it could be also, you know, it could be all traumas, not just, you know, what a parent did. It could be an environment. It could be, you know, a teacher. So many people can affect us. But so it's really important to take a look at that, you know, because that can cause a lot of emotional pain. and or our behavior based on those core beliefs can cause us pain.
You know, it's so interesting. Often when I'm doing a reading, all of a sudden somebody, will be sitting there and I'll hear 8 years old. And they don't tell me what the event was. And out of the blue, again, I won't know these people. And I'll say, what, 8 years old, what happened to you at 8? And all of a sudden they would be almost like they can't remember. Then they'll go, oh my God, well, I'll tell you. And from that arena, it starts to come out.
Yeah.
Of what happened, a memory that perhaps was lodged in and they didn't want to see or deal with,
Right,
that had caused
right.
them a tremendous amount of pain. And
Yeah.
you'll find, and we find, don't you, that people have lots of those traumas in them.
Absolutely. Anything that
It's a
overwhelms
minefield in there.
Well, yeah. I mean, anything that overwhelms the nervous system can be considered a traumatic event. It's not just, it's not just these big deal traumas that we think, it's anything that overwhelms the nervous system that then isn't helped by whomever is there, like if you're little, a parent or a caretaker, that kind of helps you kind of process it.
Right, and that caregiver needs to be sensitive to the individual child.
Absolutely.
Because some children are, as John and I know, HSP.
Yeah, highly
very,
sensitive.
very sensitive.
Yeah.
And so you have to really acknowledge who and realize who you've got there. I'll never forget when my daughter was 2. We were watching The Color Purple. She's 2 years old and she was actually asleep in my arms. So I was watching it. She was asleep.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like she's a teenager and we're watching it together. She's 2 and she's asleep in my arms. So I thought. And as I'm watching The Color Purple, and tears are just streaming down my face, and all of a sudden I felt this liquid on my arm. I said, that's weird. Like I knew my tears hadn't gone that far. And I looked down and my daughter had been 2 years old watching it, this Color
wow.
Purple, and crying.
Wow.
And then I knew, oh my gosh, I have a very sensitive one here.
Yeah.
That's how I discovered the sensitivities there.
And it's important to understand that. I love that you're saying that because we always think, well, they both have the same parents and they both came from the same family, but temperament.
Oh, and my other one is that they'll say is, 2, what do they know? 2, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Oh, it's everything.
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
Oh, yeah.
1, 2.
People remember stuff like that.
Right.
People think that you don't have a memory. Babies don't have memories, but they wouldn't be able to recognize a mother's face or a father's face
Or
or
the smell or
relatives.
the touch
They
or
wouldn't be
the-
able to recognize
Right.
any of that.
Right.
If they didn't have the ability for memory. It just gets placed, in a different part of the brain that isn't encoded through words, through language, because they don't have language yet.
I know I always bring it up, but that movie,
Which one?
Inside Out.
Oh, Inside Out.
yeah, completely.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how I simplify this whole discussion
it's
because
true.
it's so.
And all adults seem
Yeah.
can really,
Yeah.
pay attention to that. They really enjoy that movie. It's very true. There's
Well,
lots to
because
learn
it's so
from
true.
that.
Absolutely. But it's so important to know the temperament of your child, and your child, one child's temperament can be a little bit more where they can deal with changes in the environment and
Right.
not get too shooken up by it.
Right.
And other kids are very sensitive to that and can't. So you can't treat both kids.
Well, it's funny you
the
would say
same
that.
way.
My mother tells the story, and it's true. We were all in New Orleans. I must have been, maybe I was like 18, maybe, I don't know, something around there. And my sister was about 15, and my brother was 12. We're all in New Orleans. We're all outside. It's the summer. It's freaking hot. And my sister actually said, I'm hot. And we said, we're all hot. And she said, I'm hotter than you. And the truth was, she's way HSP.
Yeah.
And I mean, listen, so am I, but not. I could actually hold on, and I was okay.
Right.
Didn't bother. Didn't affect me as much. But it's to your point there.
But yeah, it's true. It's true. You feel it differently, and just because you can't relate to it, or just
Right.
because you have another child that's different, doesn't mean that they're all the same.
Right.
So that's an important thing to get to know. I love that you're saying that. Slow down and pay attention to how
yes.
sensitive your kids are. And there's no such thing as too sensitive. I can't stand when people use that word.
Oh,
too
my
sensitive.
clients hate it when they have been called that as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
That they would, that they're so special because they have to have a certain lighting or they have to have certain temperature or whatever. I mean, really, there are just real sensitive beings in the world.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
did a show all about HSP.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did. I would turn it around and say, I'm not too sensitive. I wish they would say, I don't know how to deal with your sensitivities.
Oh, that's great.
That would be different. That doesn't make it sound like there's something wrong with you.
Right.
I just don't know how to deal with it. Help me. What do you need from me right now?
Yeah.
Even when spouses say that to each other, oh, she's so sensitive or he's so sensitive. It's instead of, it means I don't know how to deal with it. And so I'm getting bothered by it because it's making me feel impotent and
Right.
And so,
and especially for men, because they have to control and they have to know and they have to fix it.
well,
to
they
fix
have
it.
the reality is we do have different brains. As much as I wanted,
Right.
I wanted to deny that. I studied it, and we do have different brains. And men are more the fix-it people.
Oh, fixers.
And whether it's cultural or probably a little bit of both because of this different brain, and that's okay.
Right.
But then ask. What
Right.
can I do? I remember a friend of mine once said I was going crazy. I was stressed out about something. And he goes, what can I do to help? And literally, I went like this. Oh, that's all I needed. And I said, no, I got it.
I love
but
that.
that's all. What can I do to help? That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So then I can say, I just need an ear, or how do you think I should figure this out? Or what can I
love
do
that,
to help?
Shirley. What can I do to help? That's very good. I got to write that one down.
So if you're feeling like you don't know how to deal with your kids' sensitivities or your spouse's sensitivities, or even you have a parent who's very sensitive, notice if you're getting angry about it because you're feeling inadequate because you don't know how to fix it, and maybe take a step back and say, what can I do to help? And they might say, nothing, I just feel, and so nothing is the answer, and then just be there and hold the space for that sensitivity.
And also, often women just want to just say whatever they're feeling at the time, and it just kind of comes out. And a lot of times, men don't want to listen.
Yeah. And it's okay for it to be annoying. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, we don't have to react to every thought or behavior we have, but if we love the person and that's what they need from us, then that's what they need from us in the moment.
Right.
And with couples counseling, we always say, okay, if I do this for you, then what do you do for me? So it feels reciprocal, not as a tit for tat, but so it feels reciprocal.
Right.
It feels like, okay, I'm getting something out of it too. It's not just take, and I'm not getting something and feeling,
Do you
satisfied.
notice with couples that one is more, the identified patient, and one is not, or one is more sensitive,
usually
one is more insensitive?
Usually the more emotional one is the one that's the identified patient, if we want to call it that. However, what I find is that many times the one that isn't emotional, many times they complain about how emotional the other one is. And I always think to myself, well, then why were you attracted to someone so emotional? Because you see a pattern where everyone they date is very emotional. And I'm like, ideally you would think you'd find someone who's just like you. So then you can both be non-emotional together and be very happy.
You're right. You would think that.
The thing
That's
is
funny.
that the dysfunction of the non-emotional one gets to stay hidden because all the attention goes on the emotional one.
True.
I figured that out.
Right.
So it's important to be curious about that because it doesn't make any sense, particularly when I get people on opposite ends of that spectrum.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
All right.
So I always do kind of, I go on a Jacques Cousteau kind of exploration with
you?
that. Yeah. Well, curiosity is the antidote to judgment. So
I love
so we
that.
can be curious about things, and then you can go on an expedition and find out and bring stuff to awareness, and that awareness then gives us those choices, where we can then change things that we don't like.
I
Not
like that
it's
idea
easy,
of
but-
curiosity because it does take away the sting or blame or any of that.
Absolutely,
And it does help release emotional pain.
Right. And when I'm working with couples and one person's going off and the other person's just kind of sitting there going, I go, are you curious as to why they're reacting that way? Or do you know why they're reacting that way? And they'll say no. Are you curious about it?
Right.
And then, hopefully they say yes if it's not too far gone. And I'll say, okay, well, ask. Ask what might be going on. And when they shift it and they ask in that curious way, it makes all the difference in the world. It really does.
Wow. And then what healing?
I know, right?
What healing?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
everybody can really, the healing comes in so they can reach their potential of why they're here. And that's the important part of releasing emotional pain,
Yes.
Using
because
like,
it's holding in your potential. Releasing pain is important to let go of.
Yeah.
It's an important thing to work on yourself to do.
Well, you talked about, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about when you said it kind of pulls down the energy.
It blocks the
Blocks
energy.
the energy is what
so
you said, yeah.
whatever the pain would be. So, again, it's particularly, I love that you brought up the Dr. Gramlich, because he's just asking questions, really. And it's somehow so pointed that it gets to exactly, and he's taking notes, and it gets to exactly what the issue is. It's amazing. The process even is amazing to
Yeah.
me.
yeah, a
But
series of questions.
It's a series
really.
of questions that just dig and then dig
And
and,
dig
and
and
no
dig.
emotion there. Just
Yeah.
dig. And it's not that we don't do that in therapy. We certainly do. And I
Yeah.
do it as a medium all the time. But it's amazing to get to the root of something.
Yeah.
Because as you were talking about earlier with the bricks, I mean, it does start to, the pain and trauma, once it finds a way in, it builds on that and builds on that. So and that blocks our natural vital life force.
which could lead to disease. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Leads
Which stands
to
for
dis-ease.
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 in the
Right.
body.
And then like if I see somebody with a hurt back, they've got a back that's aching. All right, so what's blocking you there? What do you not want to deal with? What's
Yeah.
going on? It could have to do with self-care, but often the back will represent of something like, of not wanting to grow up, take care of yourself, something about that, or pain in the neck. Really, who's a pain in your neck?
Right.
What's
Right.
going on?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
headaches. The headache things.
Yeah.
That's all this blocked energy. What do you not want to deal with? What is going on that you don't want to see or deal with?
A lot of
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We're both
Jinx?
walking over each other. I was going to say that reminds me of that book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
What does she say about that?
She breaks it down like different areas of your body and
Yes.
what the emotions are, how they're
might be
affecting.
tied into, or
Mhm.
what you might not be looking at.
Which would be
right?
interesting how that correlates with somatic,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You're-
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm certain that there's a correlation there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a documentary that came out last year. It went to Sundance called Resilience, and it was the. Can you bring that up if you find it,
Okay.
John?
Mhm.
The
Put up the book, You Can Heal Your Life. We talked about that.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And then you want Sundance film?
Resilience.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the science of. I can't remember what it is in the biology of hope, but you'll bring it up
Yeah.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
But and it has about a very famous study called the ACE study, where they showed that kids adults who had diabetes and other gastrointestinal issues or immune deficiencies, had unresolved childhood trauma. So there is definitely a tie-in. Can you
yeah,
read that?
connect-
Yeah, it says Resilience, the biology of stress and the science of hope.
Right, that's it. The biology of stress and the science of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing. And in somatics, of course, that's what we study.
And resilience. I mean, we all have a lot of resiliency. But what happens is through emotional pain, things get blocked and
We get
blocked and
stuck.
blocked. We get stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Just like the energy's stuck.
absolutely, the
Yeah.
energy's
Right,
stuck. And really,
right.
what I would love everybody to do out there is get help. Deal with
Yeah.
whatever you need to deal with, so you can have this expression of your soul in this life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of what you came to express. It's important, especially as the universe gets more intense, and we're living in intense times right now.
Yeah.
That are going to force us all to change and grow, kicking and screaming.
And a big part of that, for me, has been changing routine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Changing routine and not just doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right.
You're right.
Right.
Many
yeah.
ways.
In many ways.
In
Yeah.
many ways.
Well, I think I don't know if people realize when you really think about it, to sit and think about something that feels like common sense, but we don't have to live that way. We don't have
Boy.
to live the way that we're living, with unresolved trauma and
You have a choice. You have a choice.
yeah,
We always have a choice at every moment.
right,
We can make a different decision, a different choice, take a different road.
Right.
We just can. I mean, you're the only one blocking it yourself. You can choose differently, and there's freedom in that. And
There
ultimately,
is.
we're here to experience that freedom
Yeah.
for our soul.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And you know the commercials you see, I don't know if they're still running them, but I remember seeing them in the past. Depression hurts. That's one of the
Yes.
first things they say, depression hurts. And they're not just talking about emotionally, they're talking about physically.
Oh, yeah.
Depression hurts.
Yeah.
So that would be the energy being stuck causing the pain, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the tie-in between the body and you know, in our emotions.
And
then from a spiritual standpoint, you're saying the stuck energy.
Oh, it gets stuck, and your life force just drops, you know. And, you know, medicine is a great thing if that is your case. Also, another, you know, workout.
Well, that does a lot for the
Yeah.
brain.
Yoga is great for this. Meditation, jump in the ocean. Start bringing yourself back to life again.
self-care, right?
Self-care.
Yeah.
Chicken soup.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Matzo ball soup.
Right.
Pet love.
Pets are great.
Because the unconditional love.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
you know what's so funny? I always find that when pets, you know, I love pets more than anything. And I often wonder if they're in a home that is dysfunctional, if the animal gets sick first. I've often wondered. Have you thought about
it's
that?
definitely correlated because remember we talked with Lori Spagna. Remember at the
with
Conscious Life,
Yes, yeah.
and she did a little reading for me after the fact on my cat, and I thought the reading was going to be focused on my cat, right, and what was going on with her physically, and a lot of it came back to what was going on with me emotionally and how it was affecting
Really?
my cat
Yeah.
in a
Isn't
major
that-
way.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Wow.
In a major way.
Oh, I think they
Yeah.
pick up on all that
I think
stuff.
they do. As children,
And I was
pick
wondering,
up
like,
on
she's
it.
crying all the time. And I'm like, why is she crying all the time? And she's expressing what you're not expressing.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
Boy, that must have hit home.
Wow.
I was just like,
Wow.
Whoa.
yeah. I mean, that was an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, it's a great.
Yeah.
That's a
That
great
boy,
example.
that really.
That'll do
I mean,
it.
yeah.
You know, and why does it bug you so much when she cries? You know, and I did not say a word. I did not say a word to this woman. All I said is I would like you to tell me about what's going on physically with my cat and our relationship, and that's all I said. And she doesn't normally do email readings. She doesn't like to do email readings, and this was just a question I asked. You know,
Via email.
yeah, this
And
was
that's
just a
what
question.
she came up through the
and
email.
this was,
She's
and
very
she
good.
wrote
Yeah,
back.
it's very good.
Now she won't do email readings. This was
Right.
like a special favor, and I didn't really want necessarily an email reading. It was just sort of I wanted to get on the radar because I tried while we were at Conscious Life, right?
Right.
To meet with her, and she was extremely busy, so it never really happened. And I'm telling you, I'll let you read the reading. It's
Oh, I'd love to.
unbelievable. Just all the
Wow.
information she picked up on, and all I asked was one simple question.
Yeah.
You know.
That's wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was to the point where I'm like, it really got me thinking about my life and what's going on with my life.
Wow. So your
In a major
cat
way.
helped you.
Oh yeah, and
know.
yeah, I'll let you read it. I won't share all of it on the air, but it was very detailed
Wow.
and yeah, they are very much you know, a soulmate to you,
Yeah.
and here to
for
help
sure,
you with
for
your
sure.
growth, and
Yep.
and they're, you know, experiencing everything that maybe you're not willing to look at.
Wow. That is
Yeah,
so
that's
interesting.
been my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, John, thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing.
You know, a lot of times when you were talking about headaches and things like that, a lot of times what's underneath that is anger.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
Which
yeah.
I found. Yeah.
Migraines.
Yeah. Exactly.
Often.
Often it's anger that
Yeah.
Unexpressed.
is unexpressed.
Ah,
It's too
there you
scary to
go.
tap into. Many times, you know, and I say this ad nauseum, but the emotion is tied in with the behavior. You know, so if we had an angry parent, then we're afraid of anger. When really, and so then we don't want to feel it, and we don't want to deal with it and stuff. And really, the emotion of anger is life energy. You know,
Oh,
is,
yes. Big life energy.
A very important emotion to feel. What we do with that emotion is completely separate and different. But the two many times are associated together. You know, so I'm afraid of anger because I remember how my dad used to react to anger, for example.
Right.
But because, you know, it could be that the parent didn't have any, you know, the parent didn't have any control, but that isn't what anger is. You know, so it's so important to differentiate between the two.
I know when those headaches come on, and it's very interesting you bring up that it's repressed anger because, yeah, I'm definitely repressing anger.
Yeah.
So, and we had talked about that before. We talked about how, anger is a healthy emotion to express. It's just a way that you express it versus repressing it, right? Because that leads to the pain.
Actually, to not even to express, because sometimes no reaction is a choice.
Okay.
Is a response that we choose. It's a healthy emotion to acknowledge. To the neuroscientists have name it to tame it.
Name it to tame it. Okay.
So it's a very healthy
could you give me
emotion.
examples?
Well, so for example, like if you have a headache, I was working with this one gal who had a headache, and so tune into the headache, if it's okay to stay with it and tune into it. And then I don't know if I asked, is there emotion behind the pain? And she said immediately, it's anger. And once she got in touch with that it was anger, the headache went away. So it's that. So it's being able to tune in that way. And then you can, find out who the anger's at or what happened, and then you decide, okay, is it worth me saying something? Do I want to say something? We don't have to react to it necessarily.
Right.
In other words, with the person who maybe is the cause of the anger, it's acknowledging that it's there.
When I talked about expressing, I was meaning more like maybe doing some physical exercise to release it or something like that, not necessarily lashing out at somebody or taking.
Well, yeah, and so then that would be the next step. So
Okay.
like if we were working together and it showed up, then then you might say, and this has happened many times, so I feel it tingling down my arms. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like and so then at that point we'll do stuff because that's telling me then there might be some fight response, and so we do some exercises for the muscles to feel like you're fighting. For the primitive part of the brain that doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So then you can, your body can start to metabolize that stuck energy of anger, by expressing, by completing the fight or flight loop, by completing that
So
loop.
it is stuck energy.
Oh, yeah. Emotions are energy. And when we have to shove them down like as little kids or something, we don't complete that, the cycle of the emotion, then it gets stuck. It doesn't
Like you
just
talked
disappear.
about before many times on somatic about how the animal shakes it off in order to release it. So that how dogs just get up and shake, it
Yeah.
off, or and cats actually do it too. I've seen that,
Well,
so I
that's
guess
what you
any
said
animals really,
in the
right?
jungle they do that, don't
Yeah.
they?
And that's always stuck with me. Whenever you
yeah.
talked about somatic, that always stuck to me about shake it off. That's like the song, shake it off. But I mean,
Right.
you just need to, release it in some way rather than letting it stick to you.
Right, right, yeah.
Is that why whenever I'm around anybody that's toxic or I don't know, just feels I just want to shake it off. I actually do. I
Well, people
actually
do,
wanna,
right? Yeah, you
I
clear
just
it,
want
right?
to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And then then I'm okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's the same
But
thing,
that
huh?
could be it's along the same lines, I think, but that could be maybe because you're noticing their energy.
Oh yeah.
Maybe, and so you want to kind of shake it off.
Oh yeah, I can't be around negative energy, or when I am. I mean, I it happens all the time, I suppose. But I just have to clear, move around, leave.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
otherwise it's very draining.
Oh yeah.
I notice that when I'm around people who are either negative all the time or always talking
Oh.
about the bad stuff that's happening, and that person did this, and
Oh yeah.
Right.
I feel like at the end of the day, I'm like,
Low frequency.
my
Right.
energy is like gone.
Well, and that is they're like they rob your energy, but they would be some people. Would you agree that they're in emotional pain, and that's what causes them
Oh,
to
yeah.
act out
For
like
sure.
that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
For sure.
That's to me. I think sometimes I've explored it with people, and it's unresolved anger. But then they're spewing it all over the place, misdirectedly. That doesn't
Right.
mean that my
Yeah.
coworker maybe didn't piss me off, but
Right.
it's always. Actually, I think that there might be anger somewhere else, and I'll even a lot of times it's anger turned inward.
Right. I was about to go there. With depression,
hurting
right?
yourself and depression and stuff. And so many
Yeah.
times I go, who does that anger really belong to? And then people will say, well, it's me, it's my saying it. No, who's that voice? You weren't born with that voice. So who's that, whose voice really is it? And then it's amazing kind of the shift when they're able to say, oh, it's my mom's voice or my dad's voice or my teacher or my priest or, whoever was influential in their life
Right.
that said something.
Right.
And all of a sudden you really see it in the body, that kind of relief, like that letting go. I've had some people too, and I know this because I've experienced it, and I know that it's a function of somatic experiencing. When you go in and you kind of release stuff, all of a sudden when you look, the colors are brighter and that you see objects differently. And it really is because a lot of trauma, as you're saying, the energy gets so...
And for me,
kinda
when I'm
squashed.
sitting there doing a session with somebody and there's a lot of things that are released, the aura completely changes.
Wow.
I actually have seen, I've seen very dark auras, people that are very depressed and suicidal. I've seen real gray auras where they're kind of strange people, or they just are in that real funky down place. And then once, through either therapy or through the mediumship, energy starts to be released. And I actually then all of a sudden can see this incredible aura that comes out. Lovely colors of blue and green and healing. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
Well, that would be great, and I hope that this happens when we do our
workshop.
Our workshop
Oh,
together,
you
since we'll be
betcha.
together in the same room. Because
I'll teach everybody to do read chakras.
yeah, and well, that would
I
be
can do that.
That
We
would
can do
be
that. Would be
great. Because if they're
Make a note of that, too.
if they're experiencing, seeing things differently, seeing things clear, when there's too much trauma, then we're just into kind of fight or flight and surviving, right? And so we don't have,
Right.
from an actual visual standpoint, we don't have the capacity to really see things because we're so
true. Oh, you're so in that you can't move.
right. And so it'd be great to see if someone expresses, oh wow, I can see differently, and then you could see an aura, a change in their aura. That would be fascinating.
wouldn't that be
I'm sure
great?
I'm sure they're connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the kind of work we'll do for our workshop that's coming.
So when is it?
July 16th and 17th.
You can go to eventbrite.com. We'll plug it now
Eventbrite.
since it came up.
Eventbrite.com.
And it's expanding.
Psychological awareness.
Psychological and spiritual.
Why do we
Expanding
always
your
forget?
growth. No,
I'm going to look it up for sure.
Look it up because we can't even remember
Expanding
what we called it.
self-awareness
There we
Shirley.
go.
through
How can we not
psychological and
remember that?
spiritual
I don't
growth.
know.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I wanted to get
Listen.
back. You said about resilience, that we're all resilient.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, Dr. Alan Shore wrote these 3 great books that are kind of like, my Bible as far as, attachment and disorders of the self and how that happens. And he says, we're not born with resilience. We become resilient because we have to.
Oh, wow. I
yeah.
did not know
Isn't that fascinating?
That's really fascinating.
When we
And
say,
I
"Oh,
think
kids
we're
will
born with
adjust,"
it.
kids will adjust. We're born with the capacity to, but we're not born to just be resilient. Kids will adjust. Well, they adjust because they have to.
Interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was fascinating.
Okay.
So, what maybe tips can we give to people who are having, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain or, a little bit of both?
Well, I would say start to, pay attention to what you think is bothering you and really allow yourself to go in there. And if you need help to do it, go seek therapy to help you or mediumship or somebody that you trust that
Yeah, definitely
to
somebody
help
who's
you
trustworthy.
or that's trustworthy. Yeah.
Are you both familiar with fibromyalgia?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And that is often linked to emotional,
Yeah.
right?
Unresolved trauma.
Unresolved, yeah. And my mom suffers from that. So being on, well, I grew up with her always being in chronic pain, always having to run to get her a pill from the windowsill and bringing it in. Like she was constantly was
my
in chronic
goodness.
pain
Wow.
ever since a child.
Wow.
And
How stressful.
yeah, and it's just really sad because and I believe it. I mean, I believe it, and I've seen it manifest like in her back, and like a softball of a muscle just
Wow.
expand like, and she had accidents at work. She's like boiling water fell all over her before, and she was covered in just blisters, and I mean
Oh
just
my
horrible,
God.
horrible traumas that she's experienced constantly throughout her life, and being the child of someone who is constantly going through physical pain and emotional pain, it's very hard because, and me being here, I want to support her in some way. So I'm looking at better ways of maybe improving her diet and what she's eating and how she's taking care of herself. So I guess what I'm bringing up is for some of the listeners that have parents who are in chronic pain or friends or somebody's in chronic pain, like how do we reach them? How do we help them help themselves?
Oh, that's probably a loaded question.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
because it's important to to know where your limitations are, and it's not your responsibility.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
It's
to
so
Yeah.
hard
fix it.
though when it's your
Especially,
mother.
well,
to-
not, it is.
Yeah, but
and
some
you're
people-
HSP to boot.
Yeah.
And some people, come from, a victim identification. And so if you took that away from them, they would be, there would be a huge void and they wouldn't know what to do. So some people hold on to that, to that kind of coming from that victim identification. So there's nothing you could do
And
to
that's-
get them out of that,
And
because
that's bound
that's who
in
they
a
are.
religious background, right? So
It's,
you've
it's
got-
religion, and it's also a lot of guilt, like I
Yeah.
had said before,
Yeah.
because
That's
of
a lot.
of the divorce that took place, and she feels very, very guilty for all the problems that the second
I
marriage
have-
caused.
I have to assume that she had a traumatic upbringing, yeah?
I'm not really sure. I will say yes, actually, because I know that she had fainting spells and things like that as a child, and they
Wow.
couldn't understand what was going
Okay.
on. Or
So
what
that's collapse.
Yeah.
That's when you go beyond. It starts with fight or flight. When you can't fight or flight, you go to freeze. And when even that is too much, you go into collapse. Fainting is collapsing. Yeah, so that's extreme fear.
Yeah.
So they sent her to psychologists, and at that time they did some sort of truth serum or something
Oh,
like
boy.
that to
So I
help.
don't even know what
Okay,
that
so the
is.
answer to my question
Yeah.
is absolutely
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And
like your cat, you picked up her stuff.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm trying to keep more in touch with her and everything like that. But I'm trying
but
to always
no,
give
but always
helpful
okay.
suggestions.
But you also have to set your boundaries.
Yeah.
And you have to, be compassionate with yourself and know that you can't fix it. It's not your responsibility to fix it. And if she's not helping herself, you
She's
won't be able to
starting
help
make
her.
some progress, which
Well,
is
that's
good.
Yeah.
She really.
Sometimes, I hate to say this, and I'm not saying this about your
Right,
mom because I
right.
don't know her, but sometimes there's a little narcissism in there that's kind of clothed as, right, as
But could she be that when she gives to everybody and she's selfless all the time? There still could be narcissistic behavior.
I'm not saying that that's
no, I'm
her.
not saying.
There
No,
could be
I'm not
a-
asking you to
But
diagnose. I'm just saying.
it's called kind of like
Okay.
a closet narcissist where I'm getting all the attention, but not in the way that we classically think narcissists, like I'm the best, I'm great.
And then she suffers.
no, it's
right.
I need your help because I'm suffering, but there's the tension
But
is
she
still
never
always
asked
on
for
me.
help. That's the thing. She never asked for help. I'm just the one that offers it, and she has this thing about being around other people, feeling judged all the time. So she's.
But part of
she's
it
got a
could
lot
be and,
going
and,
on.
and not
Yeah.
and again, not that it would be conscious on her part, but
Right.
sometimes it's manipulation when they don't even know they're manipulating.
Mm.
It's like kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of narcissism, in the sense where this side thinks they're great and there's no one greater. This side thinks they're so awful, there's no one awfuler. The attention is still there. Even if they're going, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so awful, I'm so, who's still getting the attention? Me. So it's, and again,
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
saying
I
that's
know,
where your
I
mom
know,
fits
no,
in.
I know. We're speaking
But
general,
it's
but we're using
important-
my mom as somewhat of
but
an
it's
example.
important for you to protect yourself.
Right.
Many times, because it's a parent, we feel that that's not okay, and that is okay. And
Yeah.
yeah. So people who really are kind of, hanging on to that victim identification, it's hard to pull them out of it. In fact, it wouldn't be right without a therapist, because who are they without that identity, particularly if it came from, day one, right?
And I think the only time really she ever spent in therapy was during like a biofeedback pain management kind of clinic.
Yeah.
Where they were trying to get her to detox from the pain meds and things like that.
Oh, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I mean, I was bringing that up as an example because it's tough as a child
yeah.
to see someone you really really loved in chronic pain and wanted to help them in some way, but knowing that it really starts with them and having to get them to change the patterns, change
Yes.
the behavior, change the
Yes.
and I
It's
can see a
hard
lot
to-
of that coming on me.
I bet.
Yeah.
It's hard to see somebody you love
Yeah.
knowing that they can get help, knowing that there can be great change in a lifetime. It's hard to see that when they don't.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Right. So, something that can be done is just to validate, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then, that must have been really hard for you, Mom. to just validate what they're feeling. Because if you go, what if you do this, and what if you try that, and what, then you get, because if they're stuck in that victim identity, they're gonna poo-poo everything you say, and if they don't do it for themselves, you can't do it for them. So to feel a semblance of, just say, wow, that must be really tough. That must have really hurt. So it's a neutral statement. You're validating the feeling or what they're saying to you. You're neutral. You're not trying to fix it. You're not trying to, because then you get off the phone call and you're the one stressed out, and then you get angry. Why wouldn't she do this? If I know that's going to help,
Right.
So it's letting go, but still being support, because that's supportive. If I'm telling you about something that happened to me and you go, wow, that must have been really hard for you.
Right.
I feel supported.
Right.
So you're still doing something, but you're not kind of going into that quagmire of
Right. Sort of like the quicksand.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. Quagmire, quicksand. Those are both good.
Clusterfuck is another favorite of mine.
I love that one. Yeah.
But when she makes progress, then I get hopeful. When I see a little bit of
Yeah.
progress here and there, and because I feel guilty. There's a big part of me that feels guilty for being here and she's there, and I'm not there to really
That's a
support
tough
and
one,
help
isn't
her.
it?
But if you were there,
Yeah.
would she be totally better? Would she do what she needs to do to get better? Would she?
I don't know. No.
Did she when you were there?
Good question.
I don't know, because when I was there visiting, and I was there for 6 months, I didn't get to see her a lot because I was staying at my sister's, and she wasn't living with my sister at the time, because they now live all together in a big house. So, but most of the time when I was there, I was always trying to fix and help.
And did she
things.
accept your fixing and helping?
For the most part, when I was there, I think so. But but then also we would look at my life and what was going on with me, and how everything was. I was going through a really rough time when I was back there. So
Yeah.
Oh, families.
Yeah.
There's
I
something,
know,
huh?
boy.
Right.
I think the important thing is to expect the expected.
The expected? Or
Yeah,
not the
we
unexpected.
always expect people to act different than how they've
Right.
shown
Oh, so
how they've
true.
shown up for years.
Right. And however they
Why
show
are
up,
we
that is
expecting?
them.
Yeah, why are
Right.
we expecting them to be different?
Right.
Expect the expected,
Right.
and when they change, that's a nice surprise.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
what I'm
You mean
saying.
when they release emotional trauma, Shirley?
Yeah.
Right.
Is
that what
That's
you mean?
exactly what I mean.
Good.
When they can accept love, because so much
Yeah.
of it is rejecting.
So much of it, because people don't understand that if you've never experienced validation, love, good compassion, you haven't built a capacity, a tolerance for it.
Or believe
and
it's
that
sincere.
sounds
So true.
Right.
No, it's
Yeah.
that's
but
very
that
true.
sounds so weird.
No,
But
it's
we
true.
do. We haven't developed a capacity, so you have to, there's so many times I'm working with someone and they'll say, yeah, and that person said I did a good job. Oh, wait a minute. They said you did a good job? I go, stay with those words. Can you let those words in? You did a good job. And they're like, and one guy always lifts his foot up like this. He has his legs crossed and all of a sudden his foot will go up. And I said, your foot's telling me to shut the fuck up, but I'm not going to. I go, how was it? You did a good job. Let's sit with that for a little bit. And it's so interesting to see how it can't let it in. And so I'll sit with it. And then for a quick second, because they won't let it in longer than that, what does that feel? And so I get them in touch with the body.
Wow.
It feels good. How do you know it feels good? I feel calm. Okay.
Wow.
And so now we've expanded the tolerance just a teeny bit, and then it's amazing how, the first time I heard that expression, you haven't built a tolerance for good stuff, I'm like, okay, that doesn't even sound right.
very true.
But it's so true.
It's the same way with hugs.
Yes.
Some people are like, all of a sudden, next thing you know, little by little, sometimes, not always, but
There's an
sometimes they can get a little
exercise
better with that.
with couples that we do where, you hug at reunions and you stay hugged, and I do this in my office too, and you stay hugged until you notice the other person relax into the hug.
Oh.
And then wherever you notice the tightness from the other person, I instruct the spouse or the partner to put the hand wherever they know tightness, and they wait to feel the relax into the hug, and then they can
sweet.
stop. Yeah. And for some people, it's hard who haven't been hugged.
Right.
You know, for some people, like people on the Asperger's spectrum, it's difficult because it can feel very
yeah.
jarring. So that's a different
that's
story.
different.
That
We'll do a show
we
about
do-
that
Yeah,
eventually.
you don't force people, you know, like that. But for the people who haven't been hugged, but you can tell they really want that connection, it's important, little by little. Then your skin starts to get used to the touch and the hug, and So this
Well,
was. I'm glad we talked about this.
Yeah.
I
To
think
emotional pain.
Yeah.
There you go.
So we hope that you've learned something, a little something. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on our Facebook page, Both Sides Now TV. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo Dr. Shirley and Kellee White. Two perspectives, one world.